come to our attention that a mysterious force is loose somewhere in outer space.
The mysteries of creation are there.
Up in the sky?
Up in the sky.
Yeah, so as I remember you told me before that the lessons didn't really click right away with you. You know, you had the lessons and you acknowledged them, but as far as that understanding, it didn't come, till later on. So, my question is, what is it that, I guess clicked for you later on and made you really start utilizing the lessons?
Well, I think we have to recognize that in order to understand these lessons, you got to really understand the knowledge of the lessons, where the lesson came from. The lessons came from questions and answers brought to us by the prophet, the master Father Muhammad, and the messenger, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And at that time, at the time when the lessons were brought about, there was a different climate in our atmosphere. Some of that atmosphere still exists today. So based upon how the questions was asked and how it was answered, I never really understood it because I didn't have the gods that said, okay, this is what it is. This is something that we have to discover, by, research and making sure that the lessons make sense. What did it for me after a while was utilizing mathematics. There is a situation that we have that most gods don't understand called Problem 13, which is the first part of supreme wisdom that any brothers or sisters that come into the mosque have to know. And it talks about how mathematics is Islam is mathematics, and you must use mathematical theology to what? To gain things. Mathematical theology is a study of God through numbers. You know what I mean? So I started to look at that. No one told me that. You know what I mean? I remember a story where old man Abu Shahid, asked the father in the early years, about Problem 13, and it said that the father said he didn't have a problem. Right? Now, that's very profound because remember the father had a solution and it was mathematics. So when I drew that up, I said, okay, so mathematics, since it's a universal language from cell to cell, then I have to use that to connect the dots. Cell to cell mean connect the dots. Mm-hmm. So I had to use the numbers and the reality of what the numbers meant to understand the lesson. Every letter in the lesson, every word in the lesson, every mathematical equation in the lesson. And I started looking at that a little differently, and that began to arouse my curiosity more about the lesson. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the lesson, respectfully, is the journey. The life lessons that we deal with as we deal with 120 is an actual map. You know what I mean? Everything in those lessons I already been through. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Everything. Literally. I've been through it. You know what I'm saying? The hell, the devils, those that's causing trouble amongst the righteous. You know what I mean? I've been through all that. You know what I mean? So when I look at the lessons, I don't look at it from Elijah's point of view. I look at it from my own experience, utilize mathematics to draw it up, to make sense out of it. And that is what kind of gave me the gauge. Now, most people, when they get 120, they don't get the Problem 13. Mm-hmm. They don't never hear about the Problem 13. Right? But in order to understand the lesson, you must understand the origin of where the lesson came from. Right. You know what I mean? And you have to use that as a reference point. I'm not saying utilize it as a major contributing factor, but you must understand that Allah the Father was in that mosque for 3.5 years. And he was a Muslim. That's what he dubbed himself as at that time. And when he began to recognize the reality of what he was being taught and the things he taught himself, that is when he became the master of himself by saying that he was the God. Mm-hmm. And no one could dispute that. And he brought that message to us. Right. And that message is a serious message. And it takes a man or a woman a clear mind to understand it. We have a lot of young brothers and sisters out here today that don't quite understand the reality of the lesson. Mm-hmm. They're going around quoting lessons like parrots. That sound good, you know what I mean? But their understanding is not understood because look at the condition. Mm. Look at where we at. Look at what we're dealing with. We're dealing with serious science that's going on right now. Right. And a lot of them don't understand the science of life. Right. They ain't never been through life yet. They think they living. They still living dead, in a dead state of mind. And that's why our job, the true and living gods, is serious, man. I mean, man, understanding those lessons, man, is the key. That's the master key. And once you understand that, you shouldn't have no problem if you apply yourself.
Peace.
You know, Sheriff, no problem.
Peace. All right.
Peace.
So another question I had was, I know you came up in the 80s.
Yeah.
You got the knowledge in the
80s.
80s, and you know.
Yeah, the 80s was a real build or destroy time.
Exactly. Yeah. So from my understanding, the 80s was real serious, and now why? So you know, if you.
Yeah. We got to understand that, you know, after Elijah died in 75, you know, the Nation of Islam went into a big hole. You know, I'm talking about the nation. I'm talking about the nation of God and earth. And it was the gods, the five ascendants, man, that kept the Nation of Islam alive through the street. You know what I mean? At that time, in the 80s, man, I know in the desert, I can't speak for Medina or Pelon or Mecca. I know the desert was serious. You know what I mean? There used to be a place called the EU on Hillside Avenue. Those guards that see this video, you know what I'm talking about, if you from the desert. And, you know, there was a time when you couldn't walk on the street saying you was God, didn't know lessons, you know what I mean? I mean, it was serious. God would give you the universal beatdown in a minute. It was that serious, you know what I mean? You get slapped up because you said you was God, but couldn't show and prove, you know, walking around utilizing the name. And I remember before I got real deep in it, I was a part of the Zulu Nation. You know, young brother, the chapter of 5 Zulu Kings. And the guards at Andrew Jackson High School had a beef with the football team. Real serious beef, man. Real serious situation. And at that time, the Zulus and the guards were going at it as well. I remember having beef with some of the guards because I was a Zulu at the time. You know, young brothers still don't know nothing, you know what I mean? And it was a serious time, man, in the 80s. In the 80s, we know the crack epidemic was real serious. You know, the Supreme Team was in effect, you know what I mean? These are some of the guys who took the knowledge and, you know, took it to a whole nother level as it relates to, you know what I mean, the movement, and at the same time as far as getting their money up. So a lot of guards who got caught in that time, you know, was real serious, man. It was real, man, I'm telling you, the 80s was serious time, you know what I mean? And I think, respectfully, it's coming back to that. I think that time's coming back because we have too many fire pretenders, too many people, you know, walking around saying they God doing dirt, not doing it right and exact, teaching the way they want to teach it. There's only one way to teach this, man. It's the right way. You know, we all go through our ups and downs, peaks and valleys, as I said before. But the point of it is that, you know, we got to be stand corrected. If we wrong, we wrong. And you can't justify wrong, you know what I'm saying? And the 80s was a real serious time. So when I got the knowledge in 81, and I went through my 3 years of striving to understand and going through the changes and meeting guards and, you know, getting bombed or getting, you know what I mean, getting told that, well, that's not right, he's that God, and, you know what I mean, it really hit me that, yo, if I'm going to be this, it's got to be serious. You know what I mean? Because, one, I'm not trying to get beat down, and number two, you know what I mean, I got to have a certain sense about myself. So, October the 3rd, 1985, I went to the military. You know what I mean? Went in the military and, you know, met other brothers, you know what I'm saying, and started to share this knowledge with them in the military. So, yeah, the 80s was a real serious time, man. You know what I mean? Andrew Jackson High School, which is my high school alma mater. For those out there that know about Andrew Jackson High School, you know what I'm talking about. Everything is real out there, you know what I mean? And the desert, man, was a real crazy time, man. Luckily for me, I didn't really get caught up in a whole lot of nonsense, though. Like I said, I really kept to myself. I did the knowledge to a lot of things, man, and I just started, you know, getting real deep into the lessons, man. Then I went on my own. At 18, I went out there to the world, man, and started to see what the world was really like. You know what I mean? And a very rude awakening when I got out there. You know what I mean?
All right.
Say the least.
Peace.
Mm-hmm.